Thank you very much. It's great to be here, adding value up the supply chain. So this is fantastic to see. The event in itself is about adding value to the supply chain. So it's so good, great to be part of today. So I wanted to go through three key areas, a bit about my perspective and background, a bit about Patties and the culture we have at Patties, and then a bit about the innovation process and some observations from throughout my career. So who am I? I live in a multicultural relationship with a French wife and three Frozzies. So half French, half Aussie. And the French way of life is all about food. So when I'm over in France, first thing my wife's dad talks about in the morning is, all right, what are we having for lunch? What are we having for dinner? So I can't help but love food and be passionate about food. I've worked in the area for over 20 years. I grew up in Ballarat. I studied at Melbourne Uni, and then went back to Ballarat to work for Mars. And as was mentioned, I did help develop a patent and wrote the first Mars snack food patent in heat-stable M&Ms, which was a fantastic experience in innovation, and being part of that really gave me fire in the belly for a career in innovation. I went from there to Cadbury chocolates, which was a fantastic experience. I spent 2 years in Egypt working over there, and that definitely gave me some perspective. One of the key things I learned was 70% of communication is non-verbal, and it's really about body language and tone of voice and things like that. That was a great experience. Then I worked for Fonterra in New Zealand as head of innovation over there, and the New Zealand culture was fantastic in the innovation space. There's a real passion and drive around innovation, and being part of that, we went from 15 million in sales a year in innovation to 50 million in a 3-year time period. And a big part of that was a cultural transformation, and the culture around innovation that's been spoken about is so important. Then I worked for McCormick Foods across Asia Pacific, in Southeast Asia. I was going to Japan, China, India. That was a great experience, and the head office was in the US. But the thing that really stood out for me in that experience was the amount of investment that the US company was putting into R&D. It was all about R&D and technology, and that was the enabler to growth. Now, it's great to be part of Patties Foods, which is based in Australia, and it was acquired by PEP, Pacific Equity Partners, in December 2016, and has been investing. So it's so nice to be part of an opportunity now where Australia is going global. It's been investing in Patties itself in Bairnsdale. We've bought a premium pie maker in Brunswick called Boscastle, an acquisition in New Zealand, Leader, which make all the meatballs for Subway. Davies Bakery and Australian Whole Foods, we have a 50-50 partnership there. And recently we've acquired the Pakenham site in Melbourne. So Patties Bairnsdale, I call it the mothership. It's a big one where we're literally doing over 1 million kilos of pies, party pies, sausage rolls a week. Australians love pies. We can do like 60,000 party pies per hour. But from an agricultural point of view, we are using 220 tonnes of meat a week, 370 tonnes of flour a week, 25 tonnes of veggies, and that trend's growing. It's going up, vegetarian and that area. So it's fantastic to be part of Patties. But a really important transformation that's taken place is around culture. So the values have been consolidated from 7 down to 4, and culture's a really important part of any company. And these days, people want to work for a company that they believe in. And we're doing things like, we now use 100% cage-free eggs, as an example. It costs more, but we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. The other thing is we employ people that have a constructive approach to behaviour. So we talk about blue behaviour. I don't know if anyone's heard of LSI, and aggressive and passive behaviour being the red and the green. Well, we really encourage blue constructive behaviour, which is achievement-focused and humanistic. So we look out for each other in that regard. We call out if behaviour is aggressive or passive, and we actively work in that respect. So we've aimed to change our thinking from if we can't make it, you can't have it, to what does the consumer want? And the whole idea of the fork to farm is the importance of that in the innovation process and how we've been dealing with that and doing work with Monash Uni as an example in that respect. So the process of innovation, I wanted to just go through some steps here because this is a traditional process that people may be used to where you take ideas through the feasibility stage, development stage, commercialisation, etc. But to emphasise the importance of the front end of innovation. And that's where, like the sprints we've done at Monash, we've had a lot of success, and that front end is really important. But overall, one thing that I've seen in this 20 plus years in this space is HBR did a survey of hundreds of companies, and they looked at what are the most effective companies and what makes them really effective. And a key quality was the ability to make decisions fast. There's been a lot of talk about collaboration today, but I did want to make this point because I think it's quite interesting. When you're clear in an organisation of who is the decider, it really helps. And sometimes when I demonstrate this model, I hide that first bit down the bottom and I ask the question, who is the ultimate decider in this business? If something goes right, if something goes wrong, who's going to get the call? It's the CEO and the management team. And when people are clear, that is the decision-making level within a business. Things start to work and flow. To make good decisions, you need data and facts. And that's the I in this rapid model that was developed through HBR. And teams perform tasks to gather those data and facts. And then the ultimate role of the team is to then prepare options and recommend. This is the recommendation based on the data and facts. But there's a level that's really important, which I call the agreeer level. And in New Zealand, there's a word called mana. And that is people who have a real sway, where people, they may not have a role or a formal role like that, but people in the community look to them for their opinions. These are the subject matter experts, and these are the agreeers. When the team is endorsed by the subject matter experts, the decision making at that management team level is a lot easier, and the decision flows. Now that's essentially what we're doing through the development process. And the other one I think is really important is the importance of prototypes. So if a picture is 1,000 words, well, a prototype is 1,000,000. And that's what we worked with Monash Uni in that respect to very quickly develop up products and learn from our consumers. So going through kitchen creations with our chef, our master chef, Emma Dean, who's working for Patties, we come up with ideas and then we come up with prototypes, we take them to consumers and we get feedback. But it's amazing how a single word in a description of a product can change the taste. Like red tie has a different expectation to Thai style. Things like this. You learn this, and Emma was standing behind the glass or behind the screen, she'd be like, I've developed this beautiful product, but it's not resonating. But then we go back and we'd tweak and we'd learn, and now that works. The other key point that Ange was making about packaging, people buy with their eyes. Getting the packaging right, and packaging is a very hot topic, as everyone would know. So getting the packaging right is really important. But it's that mana level where we have the subject matter experts, and that's what I do with the team. I try to build within our team the subject matter expertise right along the process, from the culinary chef stage through to the sensory and nutrition experts. We work with developers and packaging experts to quickly, rapidly prototype, and that's how we get things into the market quickly. But the last point I wanted to make was, again, it's about this collaboration point. And a lot of the time, I deal with very different personalities. R&D is the meat in the sandwich. On the one side, we have very logical supply chain team members who, they're black and white. On the other side, we have very creative marketing and sales people who talk with their hands and are very different. But it's how do we talk together? And I remember having been in this area for so long, I just wrote this diagram one day because there's all these things about doing what's right And I wrote this diagram where on one side, if you read it from left to right, well, that's how do what's right, it's written. But then if you go on the other side of the table, it's written from right to left, and that's right. So it depends on where you're sitting. It depends on your perspective. But the person at the end of the table said, I can see the reason you both hold that view, but here's my suggestion to move things forward. And that's how I feel a lot of the time in innovation. I'm doing that. I'm working with my supply chain colleagues who've got a really strong view. I've got my marketing and sales colleagues who've got a really strong view. All right, now how do we listen? How do we understand? Keep it constructive, keep it blue, and that's when it flows and we move things forward. So that's my observations and innovation that I've been involved with. But I've got a short video to wrap it all up.